At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. The size of it made us all laugh. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. They got quarters, and I had a half. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do. Just lately, the shopping, a walk in the park. This is peace and contentment. It's new. The rest of the day was quite easy. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. I love you. I'm glad I exist.
That was The Orange by Wendy Cope, read for us by Tate Fountain, our guest today. She is a poet, a screenwriter, director, actor, and literary editor. An absolute Tate of all trades.
Oh, yes. Love that. I will be trademarking that.
I love that poem. It's so beautiful. I hadn't thought about it for a while, but I've definitely, I don't think I've heard it before, but I've read it before. Yeah. Why did you choose it?
Well, oh my gosh. This is a bit of a spoiler for later. There was another poet whose work I was going to read because I love them as a poet and as a person. But their poetry isn't necessarily something that I'm like attracted to. But with The Orange, even though it's rhyming, which again is not immediately something that I reach for, there are sentiments in it that I'm like, oh, that gets to the crux of like everything I am ever trying to say to anyone. Like I read this poem years ago, and the final line, I love you, I'm glad I exist, I was like, oh my God, that's everything. That's just struck something at the core of me. And so everything I write, I guess, is trying to get back to that in some way. But yeah, there's a kind of simplicity and beauty and peace and contentment, as Wendy Cope says in the poem, that I think is, a kind of quiet and stillness and certainty that in a way I really reach for and I'm always chasing.
I think it's interesting because I come from a performance poetry background and like often in slam poetry circles, and I think slam poetry, and as a result of this, performance poetry generally gets this rap of being like really shouty and aggressive and like highly charged, and I think I would like to move towards performance poetry personally that is more simple, soft, and like I don't know, there's something like a little bit stereotypically but feminine about it, you know? And I think that's what draws me to that poem as well. It's just that kind of like, oh yeah, that kind of poetry can exist and make people feel good as well.
Like, I like that it's gentle. I think there's a lot of power in gentleness, but I think there is like, there's nothing wrong with prioritizing sort of love and care and kindness and I mean everyone's always saying this, but like I think we could all do with remembering more of that and just holding on to that, because I mean I'm glad I exist as a quote is like nothing is guaranteed. All of this could end in a second, and I'd rather be like happy and loving and kind and enthusiastic and like enjoy having an orange. And also I think something I like about this poem is that when I mentioned it to my best friend last night, I was like, I don't know what poem to read, blah, 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 blah. And then I went through what I was thinking about and I said The Orange by Wendy Cope, and she goes, oh my God, yes, like that's the one, you've nailed it. And she's not necessarily a writer herself, not a huge reader of poetry, but she'd read that and she'd loved it. And so I think, I think poetry can get kind of highfalutin at times. I know my own work can, and kind of skew towards academia, but there's something to be said for just simplicity and
it makes it very accessible to everyone. Like, again, the line of I love you, glad I exist. It's like, I hope no one in the world who like hasn't had that feeling, that experience, or like wants that, like it's a very sort of just like base
Yeah,
experience.
For sure.
Yeah. And also just fruit poetry.
Oh my goodness. I feel like Wendy Cope is like quite not even an early adopter. I think that would be like very indicative of a lack of reading on my part, but certainly in terms of popularizing fruit poetry, Wendy Cope is like, oh, the orange. Like when I think of fruit poetry, I think of that. And then being in editing circles, it's like, oh, every poet has a fruit poem.
Oh, yeah.
Or 10 of them. Like there are probably thousands of anthologies you could fill with fruit poetry.
Yeah. I personally write a lot of fruit poetry. And I have this dear friend, Georgie, who also writes fruit poetry. And like when we like met on Instagram first and like sort of we're both like, oh, you're also a poet. Let's chat sometime. But then when we actually read each other's poetry, we were like, oh, it's because we're both fruit poets.
Yes, yes. There should be all these different genres. Like on Twitter, all of these different New Zealand poets were being like, oh, are you like a gorse poet, or are you a cow poet, or are you? I was like, maybe we should be going through the fruits.
Yeah, 100%.
The fruits and the vegetables, the tubers.
But I think there's, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reaching here, maybe I'm getting a bit too highfalutin, but like that, I feel like writing about fruit, writing about any kind of food, like lends itself to poetry that's more grounding, that's more sort of like,
well, it's nourishment, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's like in the moment, it's here and now. Yes. It's like, it's existence, it's to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's something fundamental.
Yeah 100%. Oh, great. I love it. I love that poem. So what was your sort of journey into poetry?
Wow,
where did it all begin?
Well, as a kid, I was very fortunate in that my family were like very much into books and literature and reading to me and engaging with me and kind of across the arts. And I was given a lot of poetry. I can remember the specific books, but I think I was a lot more focused really on novels and prose work. And then when I was maybe 13 or 14 and had sort of really realized I was going to die and how upset I was about that and still am, let's not get into it. It would be like Sylvia Plath that I was reading, or John Keats, who's like kind of my poet boyfriend. Like,
it's like 13 and 14, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I got quite attached to those things, and then it's only been later, I think, that I've got more into poetry that's like casual and chill and funny, and like now I would never go for something that, I mean, I've just gone for a rhyming poem, but I'm far less interested perhaps in really flowery language or not that I don't think that's beautiful, but sometimes I just want to strip it all away. I'm like, get rid of it. Just show me the core of what you're saying and get straight to it. I think there's a directness that I look for now, and a humor that I think comes from a lot of poets in Aotearoa. But before I was reading poetry from here, I wasn't as interested in funny or in casual or in like haha or that sort of knowing wink. I was like, we're going to be deep and we're going to be fraught and think about things. And a lot of it was love poetry still. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for poetry that just sounds like someone's voice.
When did you start writing? Like, you say you've always been exposed to poetry and like reading, but when did the writing start for you?
Ooh, kind of always.
Yeah.
I'm another one of those sort of precocious kids. It was always writing. It was always performing. I would like climb out of baskets in the lounge and do a whole show. Like, it was theatre. It was drama. If anyone would like to program those basket shows, you're welcome to. Give me a call. but yeah, so I'd be writing songs. I can still remember the first songs that I wrote. In year 4, I was in a class. It was like a digital class. It was one of the first classrooms that had loads of computers in it. And so we would spend a lot of time on those computers, and I would write all these stories with my friends about like a mother who was going through a hard time and like all of these things, and people were always fainting from loss of blood as like a clipping. I was really obsessed with that. That was what I was reaching for.
That's some real Plath energy there.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh my gosh. It was very pre-Plath, but I was always channeling Sylvia. My goodness. And then from there, sort of 13, 14, again, I've written a lot of prose that's never really been published, but the poetry started to weave its way in, particularly as a teenager. Again, people haven't read a lot of it. So I've got all this writerly past that no one really knows about. But yeah, I think I've always been on a trajectory toward being a writer, and toward doing this. But yeah, the past few years it's become like a proper thing.
And we were talking earlier, as we were chilling in the lounge, with some treats from Winona Forever.
Ooh.
Not that this is sponsored or anything. Just thought I'd give a
us a
shout
call,
out.
Winona.
Yeah. But we were talking about how, like, you know, you can feel for a significant part of your life like you're at the edge of like being part of something. And it sounds like you're sort of starting to sort of find your roots into the poetry world.
Yeah, I think there's always the danger of being really presumptuous, right? But I think over the past few months I've really started to feel like, maybe I am a bit more anchored in this. I think I said it to someone last week when I was in Wellington. I was like, I kind of just thought I was poetry's weird cousin in another city. And they're like, don't we all feel like that? And I was like, So maybe it is just this sort of, Jenny Slate would call it like a ribbon of loneliness running through who you are. But yeah, I think, and I mean, part of it will come from inclusion and groundedness in a place can often be attributed to you by people who are watching it happen, right? Rather than like famous people, and I'm not saying I'm famous. I'm not famous. But famous people. Oh, I'm on a podcast. But I think famous people always talk about never feeling like they're famous. And I think it's because things like fame or perceived like acceptance or placement are things that other people put onto you or things that happen to you rather than something you feel from the inside. So like, however certain about yourself and about your place you feel, an element of that will be coming from an external force. And you have to try not to let that sort of overpower anything that you're feeling within yourself. But yeah, I have noticed over the past few months, people have said things that have been really, really kind, but like, like, how do you get to where you are? And I'm like, I'm somewhere? What? But I think in many ways, a lot of things have just aligned, kind of a lot of them from previous rejections and then people remembering you in some way. But yeah, I think there are roots now and projects that I really care about and I feel really like lucky to be a part of, and loads of people I've met and now can call friends and colleagues, and that's lovely. The feeling of community, it's great.
What are some of the projects that you're feeling passionate about and feel like you're in a community?
Well, I feel like I can't talk about community without talking about Starling. Like,
shout out Starling.
Starling, I'm talking about you again, my beloveds.
Can we tell the listeners what Starling is, because they might not
Of course. So Starling is an online literary journal for New Zealand writers across poetry and prose and all points in between. We would love to get some more points in between. By New Zealand writers under 25. And so, it's a great foundational place for lots of writers to perhaps first be published or be published early, and then go on to have these phenomenal careers. But I've snuck in to the editorial committee as part of the team for the past few issues. And issue 15 will be my last issue on the editorial committee. But getting to work with Louise and Frances and Claudia and Sinead has been like a huge thing for me, and just something I've really enjoyed in terms of getting to know all of them better, but also getting to experience all of this writing by so many poets and prose writers and everyone else from Aotearoa, and like all these young people who are really talented and passionate and excited.
I, for some reason, really associate Starling with Wellington. Are they based in Wellington? Or
It's
like what? Like, I know it's for all of Aotearoa.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when I think of Starling, I'm like, that's a Wellington crew.
I think that'll be because so many of the Starling events have been in Wellington.
Okay.
Francis Cook. Hello, Francis, if you're listening.
Shout out.
One of the editors. I never stop talking about Francis and Louise, but he lives in Wellington. And so a lot of the launches had taken place in Wellington. There had been other festival sort of slots throughout, but I think also by virtue of Wellington being quite a poetry centre, that's been a place where Starling has popped up a lot, but it's certainly everywhere. Like I've tried to bring things a little bit further up to Tamaki, and yeah, we had a reading and a launch that was meant to happen for issue 12, and then we got COVIDed out a couple of times. It finally happened for issue 14, and we managed to get a couple of 12 and 13 contributors there as well. And it was so good to get some of the Tamaki writers of Starling into the mix and together in a space, and it was a really great reading.
It's amazing how like having people in a physical space can also make you feel more of a community vibe. Like even if you're in contact with these people a lot virtually, once you're like actually in a physical space, you're like, oh yep, I feel like more of a sense of belonging now.
Especially for a journal that is online. Like there is no tangible evidence of Starling unless you're in a room with people, or unless you print it out. But I personally never printed out the issues. I don't know, but I think that community setting and getting to share in a space, like I think it goes all the way back to Greek theatre and the social obligation of attendance and like getting to share in something. It's why cinema, it's like watching a film in a cinema is so different than watching it at home. It's why going to a theatre or anything live, like it's about that sort of group ritual and collectiveness.
If people want to access Starling, where can they find it online? Like how could they find it?
Well, they could Google Starling Magazine. I think that would help. It is a website. I'm struggling now to remember whether it's starlingmag.com. I think it is. It might be starlingmagazine.com, but I think it's starlingmag.com.
If they Google Starling Magazine NZ, they'll find it.
It will 100% be there.
Cool. Yeah, and they can find it on Instagram
Instagram,
well?
Twitter, Facebook. Yeah,
great.
We're all over it.
Cool. Great. And what other communities are you part of at the moment? You're involved with Same But Different, right? Yeah, what's Same But Different? So
Same But Different is Aotearoa's LGBTQIA+ Writers and Readers Festival. It's it's a great festival that celebrates and platforms queer writing and queer writers. And I've been their admin and events coordinator for a series of live events across August and September that were postponed from the previous festival. When, again, recurring theme, it got COVIDed out and had to be online. But yeah, that's been really great in terms of getting to know all of the board members who were involved in literature and writing and theatre and all these different ways, and getting to work with them and getting to facilitate these events with all of these writers and performers across theatre and zine making and poetry. And yeah, that's been really lovely to sort of organise it and then sit back and just bask in the glow of it.
I feel like one of the things I've noticed with these communities is like once you're tapped in, you're like, oh, this is like this amazing thing.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes like wider public just don't know about it. You know what I mean? I just, I often wonder, like, what is it that we need to tap into to make these kinds of events more like, I don't know, this is like a recurring thing on the podcast. I always compare it to the music scene, where I feel like even if you're not into a specific genre of music, like people know bands, they know artists, and they like will possibly even know that there is like a gig on somewhere or something like that, even if they're not like directly involved with it. But often with literature, to some extent theatre, but definitely poetry, if you're not like, if you don't have your ear to the ground, if you're not like on the beat, it's kind of like, poetry what? We have a what scene? You know, like
it's everyone in it is like, we're in a renaissance of New Zealand poetry.
Yeah,
and
100%.
People are just like, whoa, we have poets?
Yeah.
Those guys still exist?
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer to that is. Like, there are only so many Instagram posts you can boost to try and up your audience. I think there is a lot of interest from the general public, but it is just exposure. And I think so much of marketing, and I'm getting my arts admin hat on right now, but so much of it is to do with pre-existing audiences and what you can push and how that gets dispersed. And like, if your friends are sharing it and know about it, then you will know about it. But the way that different audiences engage with traditional media or traditional marketing versus all of the stuff online, like I think it's got to be such a sort of chemistry and some kind of almost potion to it or formula. And I don't know what that answer is, but I do believe that I think ears are open if we can access them.
I think realistically, I can't speak for other industries, but for poets, quite often it's also like, we don't want to waste our time and money on like marketing ourselves.
Yes.
You know, like
cringe.
Cringe, but also like we just want to spend our time like writing our little poems and like being together and reading them. Like we don't want to spend all that energy on being like, what's the audience doing?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
What is the trend? But at the same time, like, can potentially be a reality of.
Well, I think we have to have people who can champion poets and writers then. Like, because I know that I said cringe before, but I find it very hard. And I mean, how many times have I said I in this podcast? But I find it really hard to. Don't say that. But I find it really hard to publicize myself. Like I would much rather, if someone asked me what I'm doing, I'm like, I'll give you the spiel, but I'm not going to foist myself upon people, which I think is what it can feel like. But when I'm doing work for Starling or for Same But Different, I'm like, have you heard about this poet? This blah, 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 blah. Yes. And like just sort of become this like absurd town crier. And I think that, and that's not me like tooting my own horn, but I feel like maybe if there are those impulses that make writers not want to publicize themselves, then it's like, we need more people like shouting about them.
We need more town criers.
And that's what I really like about Starling, to be honest. Like, everyone I speak to about Starling who has been published in Starling is like, once you're published in Starling, they will champion you forever. Like, you'll announce that you're doing something, or you won't have even announced that you're doing something. Then you'll check Starling's Instagram story and it's like, Tate Fountain will be at the and you're like, how did you know? But it's this awesome, like, really supportive environment, like championing people and and getting the word out there about people's work.
So are you feeling a little bit that way about your collection that is coming out?
Delicious segue.
It's coming out on the 27th of October, am I right?
Sure is.
Yeah. How are you feeling about about that coming out and like the fact that in order to get that out into the world, you do have to sort of champion yourself a little bit. And who's your hype crew?
Oh my goodness, my grandma.
Yes.
No, I mean, I have this like legion of friends who live overseas, and Ash, my editor, was saying the other day, this is our highest number of international pre-orders that we've ever had, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know if that's 3, but yeah, I don't know who my hype crew is, but I think working in arts admin myself, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna take off my like little nervous creature hat and focus on something else, because you have to believe in yourself and the work, you know. And I like what I've done, and I think it's like this product is very much a Tate Fountain book. And so if I don't champion that, then what am I doing? And so, yeah, short films will be premiering on the 27th of October. And I feel really good about it. Like the whole process has been really, yeah, I felt very supported in terms of my own artistic autonomy and like what I want out of the book. And I felt listened to and like totally just... Yeah, it feels like my book and my product. And I think it's a lot easier to take ownership over something when you do feel that connection to it.
Yeah. I notice you're speaking in the passive a little bit. I'm curious, when you're saying that you felt supported in your creative vision and everything, like who were some of the groups along the way who like for example, your publishing house and stuff like that. Who are these people? Who are these people?
Yeah, so Short Films is being published by We Are Babies Press. They're an independent publisher in Te Whanganui Aotearoa. And yeah, they emailed me at the end of last year and were like, we're interested in a manuscript that you may have if you have one. And I was like, oh my God, what? Because as far as I was concerned, they were like the cool kids, right? Yeah. And I was sort of slowly maybe working on thinking about a manuscript, but so I'm a big believer in like when opportunities fall into your lap, you have to take them. And this was not something I ever expected. Again, I'm like fighting through the ick of talking about it right now, But yeah, and so they were like, do you have a manuscript? And I was like, give me 6 weeks and I can have a manuscript. So I just feverishly sort of collected everything I had and put it all together. And yeah, so I've been working with Ash and Stacey, who are my editors there, both poets themselves, incredible. And they have really great eyes for detail and great suggestions like as editors for the work, but at the same time they were very consistent about saying, if you feel strongly about this, you know, minor editorial decision or major editorial decision, like we want to know, because like at the end of the day it's your book, right? Yeah. And they asked me about, you know, what I wanted for the cover, and they went in and like campaigned really hard for me to get the specific artwork that I did, because it was the only artwork I'd ever wanted, and it was in a gallery, and they were like, we don't know if we can get rights, and I was like, please I will beg. And so they went back and probably did way cooler begging than I would have, and we got it. And then it was even things like, how would you like do you have any ideas about how the cover might be laid out? Or there's a section in it, in the book about, or not about, but it's like the notes section, and it's all sort of, they've enabled my gimmick of like, if the book is short films, this extra section is the special features. And so we've got special features, we've got director's commentary, we've got the credits, we've got...
Great.
And so they were like, yeah, let's do that. Like nothing felt like, oh, I've got this little idea and I don't know if they'll let me do it. Like that I really, really valued. And so, I mean, even down to designing, Yarwin, who's the designer, who's painstakingly put all of this like complicated poetry in a book and on a page. we sat down over Zoom and spent like 90 minutes just going through every single page, every alignment, every like little indentation, every like frame by frame, like it was a film.
Great.
And I think for a first book experience, I just cannot express my gratitude enough that they cared about my work, but also cared about me still having ownership and being very fastidious about these things and like, supporting that and championing that. I really, really, I'm really grateful for that.
I think that on the scale of like poets getting published, like if we think like on the world level, like that's a really unique experience to be able to have that amount of creative control, but also just like collaboration.
Yes.
With your editors and your press house. That's such a cool experience. But I think also enabled by the fact that like New Zealand is so small and like it would be really weird if they were like cold about it, because you're like,
we're going to see each other on Thursday.
You can't really get away. You almost can't get away with it. When you're just part of the community, you're like, we've got to work together. But yeah, I definitely agree that I perceive We Are Babies Press as like cool kids on the block. I'm like, oh man, I see them at Zine Fest. I'm like, yes.
I mean, if they're listening to this, they'll be like, we're not cool. And I'm like, guys, come on.
But again, it's that thing.
Yeah, it's outside perspectives. Everything happening at you. Yes.
But also just like classic New Zealanders, you know, being like unable to like gas ourselves up, or even just like admit that we're good at something. I always like, I'm in awe of Americans just being able to like own their shit and be like, you know, I'm a poet and I've got a collection coming out and like it's really cool, and you're like, what? You can say that?
Oh, I know. I still feel hesitant to call myself a poet.
Yeah.
I think that's a very loaded word. And I mean, the fact is, I've got a book of poems coming out. What else do you call me? But like, I think, and again, it's that external perspective thing of like when a lay person, because our communities, there is that separation, I guess, of like how people relate to things. But when like my friends' dads have found out about my book, they've been like, oh, so like, is it verse or like does it write? And I'm like, people are carrying around these ideas, and they're lovely, those dads. Thank you for asking and engaging and all of those things.
Shout out friends' dads.
Yeah, shout out friends' dads. Dave, you're a legend. But it's this, I think people can ascribe a lot of meaning to what a poet is, and to a certain extent those ideas are true, right? Like we're walking around, I love you, I'm glad I exist. But but at the same time, I just want to shove like New Zealand poetry under those people's noses and be like, we're actually really funny and cool. And we use a lot of full stops and ellipses. I don't know, but I think talking to poet friends, we're like, oh, maybe we have to start owning this poet label.
100%. I would agree. I mean, like, I think I've told this story on the podcast before as well. So
we love
whatever
it.
It is. So, but I started calling myself a poet when a friend of mine at a cafe that I frequented, shout out Crumb Cafe,
love you,
Crumb, introduced me as a poet, because like at the time I was working full-time as a teacher, and like I was dipping my toe into poetry and like, you know, starting to post it online a little bit and like, you know, whatever. And he introduced me to someone. He's like, oh, this is my friend Sarah, she's a poet. And I was like, am I? Okay. And that was like the first time I sort of like gave myself permission to call myself a poet. Really wasn't until someone else called me that. But owning that label was like, this is great. This is really cool. And also opened up my own mind about like what poetry could be, because I'm like, if what I'm doing is poetry, then all these other things can be poetry as well.
For sure.
I was talking to someone the other day who is a comedian. Like he does stand up. He also like teaches music at like a itinerant music teacher at school.
Legend.
He cool guy. But he does stand-up comedy, and I was like, oh, cool, like, when's the open mic, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, do you do comedy? And I was like, no, I do poetry, but sometimes it is kind of funny.
Yeah. They're in a family, I think.
Family. And earlier this year, our good friend Dan Goodwin put on a show called Laugh Riot with people like Rose Northey and who else was in the show? Sam Takani and so on. And they all did like these hilarious poems. And I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm very into it. And I also feel like that's the sort of Kiwi vibe. We're like, we want it to be funny, a little bit self-deprecating, like don't take things too seriously, but like come at it from a like funny angle.
I think so.
Do you do that in your own poetry? Because you said earlier, like, you enjoy a gentle.
Yes, I do. Hopefully you can get a little bit of both in my collection, which she said sounding very genuine. I think as a person experiencing me, like my friends, I'm constantly feeling like I'm kind of doing a type 5 at them. Like I'm sort of always this jester or trying to be. And perhaps that comes from some like teenage thing of being like, I don't think I'm funny, but I'd really like to be. Yeah. But then I'll get told by people like, oh, like Ash and Stacey, for example, they're like, oh, we're editing your book and we're still laughing at the jokes. And I'm like, oh, maybe I do have jokes. maybe it's like I've got all of these heartfelt, really declarative kind of gentle moments, and then maybe there are some zingers in there. I'd like to be able to give people a sort of rounded experience because, I mean, not that you can get away with, quote unquote, but you can get away with the academic side of things or the serious side of things or the romantic side of things and the funny. Like, I think I'm attracted to comedy. I love, like, I'm that's the type of film I want to watch. That's the type of TV I want to watch. That's the kind of thing I want to engage in. Like I love stand-up. Am not one, so maybe that's why I'm a poet. But yeah, I want to get a bit of that humor in there, and I think that's been something that's evolved with further exposure to New Zealand poetry, because looking back at my teenage poetry written by someone who definitely would have called herself a poet, it's way more serious. Like there is not space for humor. But I think when I moved back here in 2019, after spending a year in Ireland studying abroad, which I try not to bring up and now have brought up, but suddenly I was reading all of these New Zealand poems and I was feeling really disillusioned with what poetry was and what my own poetry was. And there was this huge shift. And I remember just being like, and I wrote this poem, Dolores, which was actually the first poem that Starling published. And that was how a lot of people that was their baseline for me then. That was the first thing they read from me. And I was like, oh no, this was something completely different. But I suppose it's that coming at it from a different angle and those approaches that can change and evolve over time. So like maybe I am funny now. Ha ha.
It's interesting that you were talking about how we're talking about like being genuine and also like being funny. And I feel like there's something interesting there where I think sometimes I perceive like, I don't know, laughing through something is not, or people, maybe not just me, but like people perceive laughing through something as like not being genuine, like you're trying to like run around it. But I think that there's something to be said for like humor actually giving you the space to be like really genuine and honest
for sure
about something. And I think we often do that as Kiwis. We're like, we find it really difficult to approach this topic, so we're gonna have a laugh about it to make space for it.
Well, never a truer word spoken than in jest, right? And I think there's also something about laughter is so frequently something that's shared. So it's perhaps you're talking about something difficult or expressing something quite vulnerable, but it makes it just playing with the mic here, gesturing too much. But it makes it automatically a community vibe. Like it brings you together with someone and cuts through that isolation, which is such a huge ingredient of whatever's making you tender.
Yeah, 100%. Not poetry, but I want to lean on as an example of just this like thing of using humor. Want to give a shout out to Alice Snedden's Bad News.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Love it.
I feel like that's like such a good example of that. Like always crack up, always absolutely heart-wrenching, always like, oh,
yes,
man, we are really cooked.
Yes. And taking ownership of that.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging it and not like pussyfooting around it trying to get the right words. Like the reality is like sometimes things just are cooked.
Yeah. But also managing to do that in a way that is also crack up but respectful.
Yes.
You know? I don't know. I haven't listened to. There's a podcast episode with her in it where she talks about the experience of making bad news, and maybe I
have listened to that.
You have listened to it?
I'm a podcast fiend.
Okay, great. I wonder how she feels in that in terms of like towing that line of also like respecting really heavy topics.
Yeah,
because like I feel like on the surface, if I was like, oh yeah, this person did an episode about like racism and colonization, talking about te tiriti, and it was like, it was bad news, but also like it was really funny. People might be like, how the fuck can that be funny?
But that's that thing of comedy. That's how they sneak in and get you, right? Like when you're laughing, that's when the punch comes in the drama or in the sort of intellectual exercise. Like laughter makes you open.
There's a vulnerability.
And I think you're ready to receive something if you're already in that place of like, oh, I'm laughing. Because in order to receive comedy and to like get on a joke, you have to be listening. Right? So I think comedy is a real tool for social messaging or emotional messaging or just all of those things.
Maybe that's what the poetry community needs to do to get everybody on board. We need to be funny and like make friends with comedians.
Yes. I think, I mean, I said earlier we're in a family. I kind of think we are cousins. It's just like some people are like, and the others are like crying in a corner with a lute, which can be quite funny, I reckon, if you cut it right in the edit.
The funny jester crying with a lute.
We love it.
So it's a little bit of a jump, but also a little bit of a jump back. But your collection is called Short Films.
Indeed.
Why is it called Short Films?
There's like an artistic answer and a sort of tongue-in-cheek answer.
Classic.
The tongue-in-cheek answer is that I was in a conversation with someone at the Film Commission, and they said if you want to write films, write features, and if you want to direct, like as someone who's starting out, you make short films. And I'm like, well, I am trying to get all of these projects made and make things happen. But something that I know will come into the world as someone who wants to direct is this poetry collection that I'm writing. And so I was like, well, if you want to direct, make short films. And so I went and did it. But on an artistic level, I think it also speaks to my relationship to poetry as something that is like a visual document. In terms of page poetry, when I'm writing a poem, I've cultivated this like reputation as someone who does bonkers formatting that's really fastidious and difficult, especially for digital publications. But I'm always arranging something like I'm composing a shot or like a painting or a photograph. Like it's very much a visual thing as much as it is a written thing. And so I think if we take that and see the collection as a kind of cinematic journey, if you will, there are all of these little products and little contained stories, so short films. And I always lean towards cinema, like that's where my influences are. And so I thought, how can we combine these things, these tiny little visual documents that give you as much about the state of mind or attitude of a poem in what they look like as in the words. It just felt like the right thing to call it, and not something too serious. Like I'm already thinking about what my next collection might be called. I haven't written any of it, but I'm like, I've got the name. It may change. I'm not going to say it. But I don't know. I just think it was one of the first titles I thought of, and it felt right. And it's this sort of confusing multimodal medium approach that I like to take. And so there it is, short films.
That's cool. I love that. And like meant to exist on the page.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think it's something, as primarily a performance poet, that like, I don't know, I think all performance poetry can exist on the page, and I think all page poetry can exist in performance, but like I think sometimes that's the daunting step for me. I'm like, oh man, my poem has so much life when it's performed. How can I keep it alive on the page? So it's cool that you've made something which is like so beautifully bookish.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
I mean, I got to the end of writing it and I was like, I started writing poems that weren't as involved in the formatting of them, so that I had something that I could read, because I didn't want elements of the poem to be getting lost in the translation or the adaptation from page to performance. And so there are some poems in the collection that are far easier to read because you're not missing out on anything with alignments of like square brackets or what any of that means. So I think it definitely is that sort of push and pull of page and performance.
But I guess it's also kind of like if you were to release a collection of like actual short films, there'd be some which are like experimental and take you on like an audio-visual journey and, you know, lolly scramble, and then other ones which are just like nice little vignettes that we can easily access.
Absolutely. There is also a poem in the book called Vignettes.
Oh, great. Amazing. How are you feeling about like releasing it into the world? You've had, I saw on Instagram that you got like a what are you, a proof copy?
Yeah. It feels, I want to say it feels ridiculous, but to be honest, it doesn't. I think like the idea of releasing a book will always feel a bit ridiculous. There's part of me that feels like 2 people will read it, which is fine. I never anticipate an audience for anything. But at the same time, at the moment, I kind of just feel like nothing will happen. Like it will be out there. And I for someone who's always trying to think forward and plan and narrativize, I just, there's like, that's something that doesn't exist. It's beyond me. It's gone from me now. So yeah.
Well, I feel like you've got some guaranteed readers, including your grandma. I just want to shout out
my
to your
beloved grandma. She's in all my stories. When we were off air, very podcasty term, I've told like 2 stories prominently featuring my grandma. So hi, grandma. I'm sure you'll be listening. I hope you're not doing housework at the same time. Calm down, grandma.
But she also gifted you this dress that you're wearing.
Yes, she did. For the listener, I'm rubbish with materials and fashion, unfortunately, but it's
a chiffon.
Yeah, it's a chiffon. And it's got like purpley flowers on it, black background, kind of sheer, flowy, very poety.
It's beautiful. If people are listening on Spotify, they'll be able to see
the
dress
of course,
on the artwork. Yeah, or you can look on Instagram as well.
Tiki. But yeah, she's the kind of person who will just text me, I bought you a dress, out of no sizing, no nothing. And then she'll just bring it to me when she sees me, and it's perfectly sized. And I think that in itself is a poem, but not the kind of poem you can write. Like, that just has to be something that exists, you know?
Yes.
Some things you shouldn't write them into poetry because they are poems. But yeah, thanks for the dress, Grandma. Everyone always comments on it.
That's great. What's your grandma's name?
Mari.
Mari. Shout out Mari.
Oh my gosh, now I'm emotional. Mari's mentioned in the podcast.
I reckon we should always shout out our grandmas.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you feel like that this is going to sound like a super weird segue from talking about your grandma and the dress? Do you feel like you are part of the Auckland poetry whānau, or like, you know, like do you feel like you have poetry community here?
I think by virtue of it being such a large area, there are different pockets of a poetry community.
100%. Yeah.
Like I'd say there's like probably a really strong slam community that I'm not as much a part of, but there are those little crossovers in the various Venn diagrams. And I've been speaking to a lot of people who are like, we really want to cultivate something that is more of a collective, because there are so many of us up here. And I think our geography does play a big part in it, like being down in Wellington. It's like, oh, I can understand how everyone seems to collect because it has this CBD that like facilitates that with these readings and all these locations and blah, blah, blah.
Everybody flows down the hills
Exactly.
into the CBD.
Exactly. When I was down there, it's the reverse of Auckland. Like our CBD is so hilly in comparison to everything. Anyway, I think there are lots of communities, and I think probably a lot of people at work trying to merge those or find a way for like an overall sort of shared coexistence and experience. I think this podcast is a great measure of that.
Aww,
legend. It's really awesome. I think I'll end on that. I was going to try and intellectualize, but I've actually said everything. Like I think there are lots of us around who really want to build something up and continue to cultivate things, and it's steps like this podcast that will get us there.
I think on the last episode I recorded with Muhammad Hassan, one of the things he mentioned was just like everybody also just has the power to like create a space as well, you
absolutely.
know, like if you want to write poems together, get your mates together, write some poems. You know, if you want to do a poetry performance, like invite people on Instagram and like do a little poetry performance. You know, there was this very cute poetry moment. I don't know how many people came from outside of Auckland, but technically it wasn't geographically confined because it was during lockdown last year. Called Poetry in Pajamas. And it was just this, there were two of them where people came on and like everybody was encouraged to dress in their pajamas because everybody's at home. And then people read some poems, and I was like, this is such a cool, I mean, like it was weird because we weren't like together, but it was like such a cool little moment of like connection and community that I kind of, I don't know, I didn't really like expect. I don't know. I was like, oh, wow, okay. Like I didn't expect this many people to show up to a Zoom thing called Poetry in Pajamas. But people just like made it happen. And then like a few months later, I was hanging out with a mate, and this person came on the street and were like, oh, hey. And then they're like, oh, are you Sazonk? And I was like, oh shit, yeah,
Famous.
I am. And then they're like, I saw you in Poetry in Pajamas. I was like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
So I just think, I think like taking opportunities to create these little spaces can build that community. And you talk about the podcast being a like way of doing that, but I think also publishing a book is part of that as well, legitimately, because like when people have a shared experience of like reading someone's collection of poetry, a community builds around that, and you're like, I don't
Wow.
know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do.
You're like, I'm not ready for that power.
No. Turn me into a cult leader. You heard it here first. I do agree with that. And I think that's part of the reason I'm so excited for my launches. Like, because just no one may come. We don't know. But
People will come.
cool. Have faith in yourself, Tate Fountain. But how frequently do we get people together in a room? And like, I will probably just be beside myself with nerves all night. Like, it's your birthday party and you can't enjoy it, but everyone else is having a good time. But yeah, I think just creating those spaces and opportunities for connection. And I'm really excited to have Jackson McCarthy reading and Maddie Ballard introducing me and like, yeah, just getting to be around people and poets and writers and just sort of laughing together and sharing in that space will be great.
When's the launch?
October 27th. It is at Soap. It's the same day as the
Soap.
publication. Soap! To which I have never been but have walked past many times. And
I've had many a nights at Soap. I have laughed on the dance floor. I've cried on the dance floor. I've performed at Soap.
well,
Shout out
that's
Soap.
everything I want at my book launch. So it sounds like the perfect place. But yeah, that'll be at 6 p.m. On the 27th. You are all welcome.
Yeah, come through.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's exciting times.
Great. Can't wait. And will Strange Goods have your book?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've sort of been meaning to start barraging my my publishers with that, but there are a few businesses along Karangahape Road that I'm like, oh, if I walked in and saw short films there, I would be like, ah! So
Great.
we'll see it. We'll make it happen.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. Would you like to share a poem from short films?
OMG. Yes.
Great. Fantastic.
Okay. It's about John Keats, actually, which is why he's the one I was thinking about earlier, whom I love as a person. And yeah, so in this poem, it's actually set in Tamaki, so that's cool, or at least part of it is. But
Great.
yeah, this is one of a few poems I've written where I'm kind of trying to seduce John Keats. It's called Would I Were. John, is it too much to say I'm every murmuration over your grave? Starlings curling like smoke, spelling your name in hard water. Let the odes and little faces stain the shower door forever. I'll reach for the top shelves in the pantry. I know your second-hand smug Byron's shorter than me. Darling, was it the bad review or was it love for your brother? I can understand the urge to nurse the one whose illness kills you. I've run down rugby fields and moved continents that time. Give my love to that other tea, for always. John, I'll ignore my heart and my mouth when we reach the piazza. You can point at your favourite half-sunken boat and say, oh, sweetheart, it's your cousin. Because some things never age, among them wordplay and dead loved ones. And when we get to the house in Hampstead, I'll bring my hand to your copper brow, touch light as dewdrops or the glow of the moon. I'll read in the chair your elbow rests on. John, I think you're good for my catastrophizing. Forget WebMD with an in-house doctor. You will know if the bloom is arterial. I say that now, but don't think I'd want to ask you. John, when we go to that gig, we'll stand bracketed in the corner. I'll steal hot chips over your shoulder from the basket you're holding. You'll lean back against me, crown against clavicle, vantage points be damned. And when that doesn't work out, I'll say it's nobody's fault. Very funny, yes, blame Odysseus. And we can head for the wharf where the lighthouse bleeds crimson. It's my neck of the woods. Electric sunset, light pollution. But the sea air is fresh, all the world for the both of us. And there the cool, cracked onyx of the evening will unspool, glinting with descendant time and several blazing stars. And if you go quiet, I will know why. And I will extend my left hand through marble and centuries, all to say, John, you are not going anywhere.